Welcome in this second seminar of the Open Science seminar series that the CWTS has developed together with the Dutch and Norwegian research councils. So this seminar is about open scholarly communication. We will talk a little bit about the history of open scholarship. So we talk about open access publishing types, about the role of open access in the diamond format. We talk about a little bit about licenses and about policy developments. So, talking about the history of open scholarship, you can put the first marker with the Budapest Open Access Initiative, which was formally launched in 2002. And the Budapest Open Access Initiative is a public statement and a plan of action to make open access to peer-reviewed articles in all academic fields and the preprints that precede them as the standard. So a clear formal reference point in time whereby research papers are supposed to get into a transition stage where we move towards open scholarship, open science, open access in the way we communicate as academics. And open access is, according to the Budapest Open Access Initiative, characterized by the free availability of the articles of potential interest to the scholarly community. And mark here that there's not yet speech of wider audiences, so it is to the scholarly community in the first place. And actually the Budapest Open Access Initiative was followed up quickly. You see in February 2002, this was launched, but then we had the Bethesda Statement on Open Access in April 2003, and the Berlin Declaration on Open Science, which was mostly supported by the Max Planck Society in October 2003, which was mostly oriented towards funder mandates. What's important that the initial goal was to break the power of the commercial publishing industry, to open up science on a global scale, because it was felt as a problem that scholars from low and middle income countries had little access to research results that were published in the Western world, Northwestern Europe, Canada and the US. The publishing industry reacted really fast on that by giving more access to universities and scholars in the global south, by lowering subscription rates, giving waivers, etc., etc. So as a next step, you could see that the aim of the open science movement was to make the motto, publicly paid science should be open to everybody. And everybody actually would then also entail people beyond academia and publicly funded research institutes, so to make it available to other stakeholders in the scholarly or in the science system and around that. When we talk about open access publishing, we talk about a change to make research articles free to use and to reuse. And we distinguish in general 4 types. We distinguish gold open access, green open access, hybrid and bronze. When we talk about gold open access, we talk about a certain format of publishing open access material in such a way that the journal is completely open, whereby the publisher charges authors who contribute to the journal for publishing that paper by charging so-called article processing costs, APCs. When we talk about green open access, then you see that openness is allowed after a certain embargo period, and the embargo period was initially 24 months, it's now moving to 12 or even shorter time periods, or pre-publishing manuscripts in a repository. And that repository can be either an institutional repository, many universities have such institutional repositories, or increasingly in disciplinary repositories. And the most well-known, of course, is the archive, where physicists and other natural scientists publish already for many years their preprints, but over the last couple of years we've also seen medRxiv, bioRxiv, and a more recent one, SOCarchive. Hybrid open access publishing is a situation whereby the journal is actually still a toll access journal, so it's closed, but as an author who wants to publish in the journal, you can pay to publish your paper in open access format. So you pay APCs to get your paper open access available in a closed journal. And when we talk about bronze, that's a kind of a particular situation, because here it's the publishers that make the decision on opening up results in publications, they decide on their own reasoning why, or make certain individual papers freely accessible in closed journals. And particularly in the corona pandemic, you saw that many publishers opened up many of their journals to make accessibility and thereby transfer of knowledge more quickly and rapidly going in the academic system, thereby helping the system to fight the pandemic. So if we talk about open access, it is about gold open access because it plays in many situations a crucial role. So how actually can we realize gold open access publishing? So the well-known initiatives are the APC model. We come to talk about that in a moment. Via the transformative agreements, or the big deals, or read and publish deals, and that involves hybrid publishing, or the diamond model, and I come to talk about that in a moment as well. Or a more recent initiative is Subscribe to Open, which is an initiative whereby publishers and their journals can, under certain conditions, get in a situation that if the subscriptions remain loyal to the journal and the publisher, then after a year a publisher can decide to make all the available publications in the journal freely accessible for everybody to read. So here it is a certain degree of loyalty between subscribers and publisher that makes that feeds the decision to open up or not. So in the whole transition, we talk about the changing of publishing models. So basically, business models had to be rethought. So the model we now still use is the subscription model, which means that the consumer pays. So we still have a situation whereby many journals are accessible to academics in universities via the university library system and the digital access to their portfolio of journals. Many university libraries have these agreements with publishers, so many publishing houses offer a variety or a large variety of journals to every university, but that's going to change because a change in perspective is involved in the move towards open scholarship, whereby producer pays. So it is APCs are the way to open up scholarly literature. Let us talk a little bit about the APCs. Here you see the family of journals that are offered by The Lancet, and that means of course The Lancet as the general journal, but you also see here that The Lancet has nowadays many offspring in more specialized journals involving biomedical research. And in this table you see in the column on the left hand you see all the titles of The Lancet. The first one is the general journal, The Lancet, and then you see in the middle column you see whether it is hybrid or gold, and you see in the right column you see the APCs involved. And what is clearly in reading this table that the journals that are in the gold format have actually in general somewhat lower APC rates, particularly if you look at the journals that are in the lower part of the table that involve regional health. There you see that for some of the regions that are supported or that are actually the goal of the journal have really low APC rates. So you see that APC rates even within the portfolio of one particular journal package is rather diverse. So if you look at the composition of APC costs for the journal eLife, projected for 2017 cost per article, on the left hand, the composition of the costs. So the fixed costs are in total nearly 1,300 British pounds, which involves article processing, features and marketing, while the marginal costs, which are flexible, that involves the editors, the online system, staff and outsourcing and waivers and collection costs, is close to 1,800 British pounds. And this, keep in mind that this is not even involving the margin of a publisher that is in any publisher, particularly commercial publishers, where there is profit margin on top of this. So you see how the APCs are composed of different elements in the whole process from receiving manuscripts to the final publishing and making it available, the dissemination of research results across the scholarly landscape. And if we then come to QSS, that's Quantitative Science Studies, which is actually published by MIT Press Direct, here you can see that every publisher determines their own APC rates. And also that there is a rather diversity in terms of the university nor the transparency in the APC rate. You see that the APC rate for this journal is $600 for members of an international society of cytometrics and informatics, or $800 for non-members. So you see there's a huge gap between the APC rates that are charged by MIT for publishing in QSS compared to the APC rates that are charged by the Lancet for publishing in one of the journals of the Lancet family, even the ones that are aimed at lower and middle income countries when it comes to regional health issues. Then a more recent development is the so-called Diamond Open Access format, and you see here the action plan for Diamond Open Access by Science Europe, and it is mostly about linking open science to equity. So in this model, the costs for publishing scholarly papers are paid by organizations or national governments. So examples of this are the Open Library of the Humanities, which is a consortium of university libraries together willing to take up the cost for publishing papers in the humanities fields, as well as Latin American countries where on a national basis open access publishing is paid by the national government. So the national government takes up the responsibility for the open accessibility of research results across the country and beyond. And the costs for Diamond Open Access are in general lower, as profit making is not part of the business model. I just showed you that what are the APCs based on in terms of costs, and I mentioned that there was no profit margin involved yet. That is taken out. Something we have to talk about a little bit, and I'm not going to get into much detail because I'm not an expert in this sense, involves licensing. Because the transition towards open access publishing means a break with the existing copyright and licensing situation. As at the moment, in the subscription model, the copyright is actually signed off by an author to the individual publishing houses, and the authors keep a license to disseminate the papers, but on a very marginal scale. And the open access model actually inverts the situation where the authors are supposed to keep the license completely, but we also find different types of licenses. So an American non-profit organization, Creative Commons, who is actually responsible for the licensing that we're going to talk about. So what you see here is a grouping of licensing in 4 different sections, and it is actually licensing for the whole creative sector, where you can say that academia falls under as well. One of those license types is CC, as it's called, Creative Commons BY, which is actually linked to attribution. You have CC-SA, which is share alike. Then you have CC-NC, non-commercial. And you have CC-ND, no derivative works allowed. So what does it actually mean? That some combinations of the license in the upper section are very open for sharing, remixing, and even commercial usage. So this is giving you a lot of freedom to, you sign off a lot of freedom in the reuse and of your research results while publishing under any of these licenses, CC0, CC BY, or CC BY SA. If you publish by CC-NC or CC-NC SA, this is somewhat less open. So it allows sharing and remixing, but there's no commercial usage allowed, and not all sharing is also allowed. And then the next step, which is even more closed, that involves CC BY ND, CC BY NC ND. Sharing is still allowed, but no commercial uses are allowed, as well as no derivative works can be made from research results under this kind of licenses. And of course, the last one, that's the situation where we are in with closed access publishing, that no rights are transferred, no sharing, remixing, or derivatives are allowed, nor are any commercial usage allowed under this license type.